Chapter 8, Mishnah 1. This chapter deals with the laws of physical injuries inflicted by one person on another. The first Mishnah lists and explains the different payments that the attacker must make to the victim. Someone who wounds another person is obligated to pay him for 5 things, i.e., 5 aspects of the injury. 1. For the damage itself, i.e., the victim's loss of value. 2. For the pain that he suffered. 3. For the expenses of healing. 4. For loss of employment. 5. And for embarrassment. The Mishnah elaborates on each of these 5 categories, starting with damage. How is the payment for damage calculated? If, for example, he blinded the victim's eye, cut off his hand, or broke his leg, we view the victim as though he were a servant being sold in the market, and we estimate how much he was worth when he still had the eye, hand, or leg, and how much he is worth without it. The attacker should pay the difference. The second payment, pain. How is the payment for pain calculated? If, for example, he burned the victim with a hot iron spit or with a hot nail, even if he burned him on his fingernail, which is a place where a burn does not make a wound that would reduce his market value, we estimate how much money a man like this victim, with his particular sensitivity and tolerance of pain, would want to take to suffer such pain, and the attacker must pay him that amount. The third category, healing. What is healing? If one person struck another, he is obligated to heal him. That is, he must pay the expenses of healing the injury, such as doctor's bills and medicines. Some laws about the obligation to pay for healing. If blisters developed on his skin near the wound, the law is that if they developed as a result of the wound, the attacker is obligated to pay for healing them as well. But if they did not develop as a result of the wound, he is not obligated to pay for healing them. If the wound healed and returned, and then again it healed and returned, i.e., it kept returning because it was never fully healed, the attacker is obligated to heal him. That is, he must pay for the medical expenses again and again until it is healed completely. If, however, the wound healed completely and then returned, the attacker is not obligated to heal him. The fourth payment, loss of employment. How is loss of employment calculated? If the victim cannot do the type of work that he did before, for example, he lost a hand and he cannot work without it, we view him as though he were a watchman of a field of cucumbers, because that is all he is fit to do now. The attacker must pay him the wages of a cucumber watchman for every day that his illness, which was caused by the injury, keeps him bedridden and prevents him from doing even such simple work. However, the attacker does not have to pay him the wages he was earning before he was wounded, because he has already given him the value of his hand or the value of his foot when he paid for damage, and that amount included whatever he would have earned had he not been injured. The fifth payment, embarrassment. How is embarrassment calculated? It all depends on the status of the one who caused the embarrassment and the status of the one who was embarrassed. The lower the status of the attacker, the greater the disgrace he causes, and the higher the status of the victim, the greater the disgrace he suffers. We estimate how much a person of the victim's status would pay to avoid being embarrassed by someone of the attacker's status, and the attacker must pay that amount. Some laws about the payment for embarrassment. If someone embarrasses a naked person, for example, he spits on him or slaps him, or if he embarrasses a blind person who senses that he's being disgraced even though he cannot see it, or if he embarrasses a sleeping person who upon waking realizes that he had been disgraced in his sleep. In each of these cases, he is obligated to pay for the disgrace that he caused, because people suffer disgrace even if they are unclothed, blind, or asleep at the time. But if a sleeping person embarrassed someone, for example, he kicked another person in his sleep, or he fell off his bed on top of him, he is not obligated to pay, because one must pay for embarrassing someone only if he attacked him intentionally, as derived from the verse quoted below. If someone fell from a roof by accident and injured and embarrassed another person by falling on him, he is obligated to pay for the damage, because the person must pay damage even if the attack was unintentional. But he is not obligated to pay for the embarrassment, because payment for embarrassment is required only in the case of an intentional attack. As it is stated regarding the payment for embarrassment in Deuteronomy chapter 25, verse 11, if men fight one another, and the wife of one of them approaches to rescue her husband from the hand of the one who is hitting him, and to do so she stretches out her hand and grasps his embarrassing place, i.e. his private parts, to embarrass him and thus stop him from hitting her husband, the words, and she stretches out her hand, imply that she attacks him intentionally. Therefore, one is not obligated to pay for embarrassing someone unless he intended to harm him.